Hello and welcome to another episode of the CollabTalk podcast. This show is dedicated to exploring how and why we collaborate, whether one-on-one, within small teams, or across entire organizations. Through conversations with experts, real-world stories, and practical insights, we break down what makes collaboration work or fail and how to improve it. And my guest today, I'm excited to get into this. This is kind of I call this like a nerdy, in the weeds topic. Even though it's it's a great leadership topic that, again, at a high level, people have probably spent a little time reading, talking about this. But my guest today is Tatyana Gao, founder and CEO of Manada Coaching and Consulting. And we're talking today about leading with awareness, the shift to conscious leadership. So welcome, Tatyana.
Thank you so much, Christian. I'm so pleased and happy to be at the CollabTalk podcast. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to share with you my conscious leadership method and the idea that when we step into awareness as leaders, we actually create thriving environments. And just to give you a little bit of a background of where I come from, as the CEO and founder of Manada Coaching and Consulting, I had an interesting journey of where I had to learn how to become the conscious leader of my own life, and then realized that leadership, consciousness, and spirituality were actually the trifecta of how to become the conscious leader individually, on an individual level, and then in companies and organizations. So, would you like me to start anywhere particular?
Yeah, well, maybe really quick, a couple words about what your company does as well, and then I'll start with my first question, like
Sounds
specifically
wonderful.
what you do. Yeah.
Absolutely. So at Manada Coaching and Consulting, we're absolutely passionate about educating, empowering, and transforming leaders and helping them to create thriving companies and organizations. Because let's face it, insecure leaders create toxic environments that people leave, that makes it impossible to be in that environment, and everyone suffers. That creates mental health issues, the health issues, just into physical health issues. And when we step into our awareness of how we can develop as individuals, we become better leaders. And basically, my company is really focused on helping leaders through the executive leadership coaching. That's one side. And on the other side, we deliver corporate trainings on leadership development, emotional intelligence, communications, based on John Maxwell framework, of course, and the conscious leadership framework that I developed as well.
That's great. As far as we were talking and kind of getting to know each other in previous calls and in chatting online about this, and I had shared some of my background. It was like 17 years ago now. Time flies. Where I went through a year-long leadership development program that I mentioned called Pathwise. It was based in the Seattle area. It's now, I think it's somewhere on the East Coast, might be New York or Boston, but also San Francisco Bay Area, but Seattle based, and was developed by a psychiatrist and a psychologist that were friends since high school. They went different paths. One went the technology path towards technical project management with a psychology degree. The other one became a psychiatrist. So had what the medical side of that route. They got back together and they started recognizing the problems in leadership and leadership development. So they developed that program. I was in one of the earliest cohorts, I believe cohort number 4 of their program. So near the beginning of the forming of that. And now they're dozens and dozens. I don't even know what number they're on now of cohorts. But so much of it focused on this idea of self-awareness. Like it's in software development, like one of the criticisms is like you can't try to solve something until you understand the problem and the scope of that problem, because otherwise the solution you're developing might be too big or go in the wrong direction, kind of all those things. It's similar with leadership development. It's like if you're not self-aware, if you're not aware of your own strengths and weaknesses, kind of all those other things, you're not conscious, you're not aware of like then how you impact everything else. I mean, how do you define, when you talk to people that are new to this subject, how do you talk about and define conscious leadership?
That's a great question. Conscious leadership is an opportunity to look into yourself and bring yourself to a higher level of your awareness, your consciousness, and your leadership. It's basically the journey of shifting your mindset from the victim mentality of like things happen to me and everyone is to blame, right? Where we're closed minded and thinking like, well, I am born this way, so there is nothing I can do. Then we're shifting to what Carol Susanbach called the growth mindset, right? So first fixed mindset, then growth mindset, where, oh, okay, if I practice maybe a specific skill, then by the end of the year, I'm going to get really good at it. If I practice public speaking, then by the end of the year, I'm going to start landing speaking gigs, for example,
Yeah.
and get really good as a speaker. And then we get to even a higher level of what I call the conscious leader mindset, where you basically see yourself, you embody, for example, if we follow the example of the speaker, right? You embody the soul level speaker here and now because this, is your purpose and the realization of your potential.
Hmm.
So this is basically the conscious leadership in a nutshell, right? How to embody your soul leadership.
I mean, one of the hardest things, and this goes back to, my undergrad took the psychology class. It was required as part of my general education. But learning about the different personality types, like the Freudian personality styles, which always, it sounds so negative, like that side of things. If you've never read that, it did research into that background. But
Okay.
um, it is one of the things that we talked about is how difficult it is to look inwardly versus like we see it's easy for me to interact with people and then pick apart like I see what they're doing and what they're doing, but we're usually unaware. I mean, how difficult it is, especially is it when you work with clients around this, or you're coaching or going into a company for how difficult do you see is it? What are the problems that people in identifying their own their style, their tone, their language, like to recognize what's going wrong with themselves before going outward?
I think you just asked a wonderful lead-in question. And what I mean by that is that for the longest time, I was looking for a specific tool to help people kind of like use it to understand themselves from the standpoint of psychology. Okay. And when I became the certified John Maxwell Leadership Certified Team Speaker, Trainer, Coach, and DISC Behavioral Assessment Consultant, that was just it, because I realized after doing my own report that this is truly incredible. I learned so much myself, about my style, about why would I bump heads with certain people along the way in my professional journey in the first place.
Yeah.
And that level of self-awareness created a shift in my mind in understanding that, wait, not everyone communicates the same way I do. Not everyone sees the world the same way I do. And as a matter of fact, if you put like say 10, 12 people in a boardroom and imagine like let's say we all have our filter of perception, right? It's based on our conditioning, familial, our societal, economic, etc., cultural. And say we're all looking at the white vase, but all of our glasses are different colors, like say yellow, brown, purple, black, green, blue, etc. And if you ask different people to describe what color is the vase, they're going to say it's slightly different color,
Mhm.
simply because they have a slightly different way of seeing it, but also because they're different in how they're created, how they're made, I guess, if we can put it this way. So what I've discovered is that using the Maxwell, specifically DISC assessment, because it's quite different from a regular DISC assessment. It gives you the report of like 33 pages where it dives into your specific personality style, your communication style, your leadership styles, your challenges, now how you come across to other styles. And then it gives you the idea of how you can leverage your communication strength and weaknesses to better connect with other styles. So that's truly incredible.
Yeah.
And I actually use this in my executive coaching with executives, team leaders, business owners, and their teams. One of the things that I discover I absolutely love doing is teaching communication to teams and helping them to align their pathways of communicating and understanding, like, wait, if I'm a dominant style D, meaning that I like to see a great big picture, but I'm really not good with details and I'm not patient with people. And let's face it, most of the CEOs and directors are Ds, right? But the majority of our workforce is made of C's, steady, and S, steady, and C, compliant,
Hmm.
right? They're a little more process oriented. They're not as good at the big picture thinking, but they are great at details. And this is exactly what is needed to drive the company, to create the processes, right? To advance the company's mission.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is that if we take the compliant C, who is really great at spreadsheets, the numbers, they
Hmm.
can tell you how many people in a conference room of 200 people were wearing red.
Yeah.
But if you put them together with the CEO who is a D, they are not going to connect. And as a matter of fact, most of them will butt heads because of such a drastic difference in perceiving communication and in communicating and in leading. And
Yeah.
so I often find, small business owners actually struggling with creating communication with their team. They don't understand, like, why is it that they're not moving forward? Why is it that they're not motivated? And oftentimes, a simple tweak in communication is understanding that what is it that they need to feel respected and to feel valued in the communication. And say, if you're an I, which is influential, you're really great at connecting with people, you love creating connections and relationships, but you're also a big picture thinker. And
Yeah.
your team is comprised of steadies and compliance, then chances are you're probably going to fly by the seat of your pants, meaning that, oh, let's go with the flow. We don't need an agenda for the meeting. But those people who are working for you actually do need the agenda for the meeting. And they do feel uncomfortable when they don't have one because they feel unprepared and they feel like completely outside of their comfort zone.
Yeah. Yeah. What's amazing looking back at this, and again, some of where a lot of these concepts come from. I mean, this goes back into, I'm trying to remember when like the Myers-Briggs studies were done. Was that like 50s and 60s or something? I don't know. It went on for a long time. And a lot of the models that are built around that, like uh, my first experience with something like this was going back over 30 years when I worked for EDS consulting. I worked for EDS Medical in Sacramento, California, and we did this exercise with our business unit with a group of us where it was a mind mapping exercise. It was Myers-Briggs based data, like there's a whole questionnaire, an individual questionnaire. But what became powerful about it is when you start to, like, one, you're looking through this, you're reading through your individual profile and you're thinking, nailed it, maybe sort of, like it's not divinely specific for your life, every aspect of that. It's
Mhm.
the general patterns based on your responses. And I know that there's unconscious bias in how we respond to some things too, so there's some room there, like because we're all, I think one of the learnings from all of that is we're a mixture of kind of all of the different styles. We just might be on a scale to 100, like well, I'll kind of get to that where I came out in a later program. But you might be 80% where somebody else is 20% of that thing, and they're 80% 20 on something else that's different. But doing the mind mapping, and this vendor that we were working with actually laid out this giant grid, because there's about 100 of us, laid
Mhm.
out this giant grid with tape, and we all kind of stood on this grid around our areas. And as I look around, and what's incredible about this, having been through this several times with different companies, a
Mhm.
similar exercise, how accurately it showed. Like, I'm looking at the people right around me that are just like me. Like, they're my friends. They're the ones that I get along the best with in here. And the people that
Mhm.
I had the problems with were on the exact opposite end of this grid. And like that explained that. Like,
Yeah.
it's one, and when I think of, again, like in emotional intelligence, is it's one, recognizing all of that and like my traits, and even reading and understanding the traits of the people that you work with. And that's not something, I don't know if you do this, but do you interact with somebody who said, hey, do you have your personality profile? Can I review that before our meeting? Like, no, that doesn't happen, you know. But it is a difficult skill to master, to be able to recognize, and then the other personality styles when you're interacting with people, and then to remember, okay, like Tatyana, your style with my style, this is the best way that we communicate. I need to be doing these things. It's really hard to do that. Again, that's something that you have to intentionally practice and develop like any other muscle.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree with you more. And here's the thing, for business owners who are developing, growing their business, it is an absolute must for themselves and their teams to learn emotional intelligence, to kind of like do these assessments so that they can learn, okay, if I'm a D style, and I'm a sales professional and I need to sell the product, chances are I need to understand who's in front of me. And if I don't understand and I'm just speaking straightforward, not knowing that these come off very strong at times, right? If a potential client who's in front of me, say, is compliant or a steady or a combination, some sort of combination of the two or more, chances are they're going to be conflict averse. And chances are they may perceive a really kind of like strong headed D as being too pushy, controversial, and even aggressive. That's the interesting thing. The point of emotional intelligence by Daniel Goleman, right? To understand self awareness, self regulation, social awareness, relationship management, and empathy. And there are a couple more additions to that. But the idea, the social awareness kicks in when you start understanding, okay, if this is my style of communication, and the point of learning this is to be able to create authentic connections with other people, other professionals on my team, with my team, if you're a leader, and then, with the clients, with your people in your families and in your communities.
Yeah.
And how do you do that? By tuning into the understanding, okay, there are four different communication styles. And even though we all have them, we have the strongest ones that show up most of the time, right? And you kind of start this guessing game. And even if you don't have their report and you can say, hey, can you show me your report, as you said, right? You can start understanding, like, this person asks a lot of questions. I wonder if they may be a C, because they probably comprise the whole picture of the conversation based on the details that they're collecting to then put them into a bigger picture.
Yeah.
Whereas, say, an I or a D are able to see that bigger picture right away, and they're not really good with details at all. And the whole breakthrough for me was in understanding, and this is what Maxwell's disc report actually does. They give you the breakdown of how to connect to all four styles for your specific communication style, how to add value to the person who's in front of you. Because let's face it, just because we communicated something does not mean it was received on the other end, and it does not mean that if it was received exactly how you meant to communicate it. That's the trick.
Yeah.
But say, if you are a C, right, the compliant with all the wonderful details, and you're coming to your boss, who is, for example, is a D, and then all of a sudden you start clashing and misunderstanding and being like unhappy with each other. But now that you know that your boss is a D, for example, that they only want bullet points, like 3 bullet points out of the report. That's all they want. Show me the money. That's
Right.
it.
Yeah. And then,
Right?
well, I've had many, and I'm that way too, to some degree, where just because I think, well, and actually, let me put this in the form of the question. Though, kind of two questions here. So one, can emotional intelligence be developed over time, or is it more about understanding and leveraging like what you have, innately? Like, is
Mhm.
that all you're doing? So that's the first question. Can EQ be developed?
Mhm.
And Well, let's start there. I think we could have a long discussion around that one. So, can it be
Sure.
developed over time? I mean, I know you're doing coaching and things around there, or is it something where you're just helping them to make the most of what they have already?
Okay, so here's the thing about awareness. So it's evolution and growth over lifetime. There is no stopping to growing and developing. The whole point of life is to grow and develop into the best version of you. And if we look at it from this perspective, when people take it on as their journey, they have a much better life than when they don't, right? And then the life pushes them outside of their comfort zone. The point of emotional intelligence is yes, it can and should be absolutely developed, and leaders and people who are investing time, resources, and energy into growing themselves become better leaders, become better parents, become better friends, become better in romantic relationships,
Mhm.
become better everything because they understand themselves. They are aware of who's in front of them and how they are reacting to what you're saying, basically. And then you're creating the connection based on trust, based on respect, based on kindness, not based on sabotage and manipulation, out of the fear of being disconnected or being hurt, or like personal insecurities of some sort.
Yeah.
So, to answer your question shortly, yes, it absolutely can, and I think it absolutely should.
Well, that's why again, I having been in several organizations where they've gone through the exercise. Like again, I would answer the same way. But I thought that's a good question, out there. People thinking, well, because there are people that we all know, and I'm thinking of one in particular. I've known him since he was a middle school student. So, and that he just was one of these people that people were drawn to him. He was one of those that he would be just a fantastic salesperson,
Mhm,
and I guess in some levels he went into financial services, but was selling was part of that. But he's one of those people that, and we've all interacted with them, where you can have a conversation. You feel like the most important person in the world. Like it just draws you in, those people that are able to such good communicators and
mhm,
connect with you. And it does like um, you know, there's the whole conscious versus unconscious side of that thing, and
yeah.
that's a lot of the if you are operating at a higher level, if you are, if you're able to identify the other styles and can communicate good with them. But then again, stress is a great indicator of it drops people down, their lower functioning, and starts to
Mhm,
uncover some of the unconscious things. And that's
yeah.
where you have, when people are cranky or stressed out, they're rude to their children, to the wait staff at a restaurant, like things like that that come out. There are other people that get stressed out. They don't lash out like that.
Mhm,
And so it's kind of the same. And it's having gone through this, like when I was at Microsoft, they worked with a partner, so it's a company called Insights. So it
mhm,
was, again, Myers-Briggs based. They had, and I've got them somewhere in my office in a closet or something, these colored bricks, which indicate, and for folks that are in the Microsoft ecosystem, and if you were ever at Microsoft, you're probably familiar with all this, but the, red, yellow, blue, and green. And
mhm,
red was like that driver, the go-to, the project manager, like, let's go and execute this plan kind of thing. The blue was the data. And you think of it like Microsoft history, Steve Ballmer, very red. Um,
mhm,
uh, uh, Bill Gates, still very red, but he was blue, data analysis around it. Let's, like that, thinking about those things. Then you have yellow, which is the let's collaborate, let's do it together, let's be creative, let's come up with ideas, let's pull these other people in for feedback. And then
mhm.
green, which is the, hey, I'm here to support you. What do you need? Do you need a hug? I can
Yeah.
help you out with that, kind of in the background. And we're all a mixture of all of those things.
Yeah.
And just like doing the mind mapping, going through that exercise individually and looking at it, like I can, on the surface, I can be pretty high in the blue, the data side of that, but in the unconscious, like I have to dig deep to get
Mhm,
that, to be able to share it. And it's not that I can't. It's that I don't enjoy it. It's not natural for me. Um,
Mhm.
but what's interesting about doing that and seeing that in relation to the rest of your team is kind of what we're talking about. It's then looking at and saying, okay, this helps me understand why I struggle with this direct report. This is why I struggle with this peer or this leader, because they're on the opposite side of the color wheel of the mind map of whatever this is. And
Right.
then it's a matter of, okay, let me learn how my personality type communicates the best, what I need to do for that manager. It almost feels like cheating. Like when you do that and it starts and for folks that have to try it, like it works. And suddenly this difficult person, this difficult leader that you've never been able to get along with, you find you're
Mhm.
just like, all right. And they're happy with the communication, the information that you gave, and the interactions start turning positive. And you're just like, I pulled one over on everybody. Like I found the cheat sheet. I can see the matrix now and how to deal
Mm.
with this person.
That's actually amazing. You have so many incredible points in the story that you just shared. And a Maxwell disc report actually gives you three different what are they called? Frames. So the first one is how you see yourself, graphs, right? The second one is how the public views you, and the third one is how you show up under stress. And so this is such an incredible tool to understand that, for example, as a D, surprise, I get more controlling. Like there is every of the four styles have their own fears, strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, etc.
Yeah.
But when they're afraid of something, that induces their specific behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, these get more controlling when they are stressed and when they feel like things get out of their control. Now, I had to learn how to let go, like big time. And if you're a D, you're listening to this, like, here's an advice for you. Learn how to become self-aware and notice where is it that you are gripping to things and making the situation worse, actually.
Yeah.
So, several things that popped to my mind when I was listening to you. One of them, when it comes to conscious leadership and emotional intelligence, learning how to work with our triggers is a very big deal. Because when we get stressed, you're absolutely right. We drop down to our like survival mode mentality, right? Functioning the first level of consciousness.
Yeah.
And what happens is that we get reactive. But one of the tips I'm going to give the listeners today is that before you react, just keep in mind that there is this, I call it a power pause, a pause before between the stimulus from the outside and the response that you are ready to give out, right? So when you're feeling like you are starting to explode internally and you're getting angry or frustrated or whatever it is negative emotion you're experiencing, before you say anything, write anything, or do anything, take a deep breath and just like ask yourself what is happening. If you're in a meeting, for example, and the meeting with your subordinate or your meeting with your boss is making you like absolutely crazy and uncomfortable, you have the right to say, would you excuse me? I need to get a glass of water, or I need to go to the restroom, or whatever it is. Take yourself outside of the situation, compose yourself, to take some deep breaths. And by deep breaths, I mean like slow deep breath, count 1, 2, 3, 4, in, hold, breathe out. It does magic to your body, it calms your mind instantly. We don't use the breath work enough. And so once you have calmed yourself down, then ask yourself, what just happened? Doesn't feel like he really asked anything, but I'm reacting in such a dramatic way. What's he showing me? And so the conscious leader mindset here is seeing the outside negative sort of like experience as an opportunity to learn more about yourself internally and what is the trigger, the limiting belief, the limiting thinking pattern, the programs that you need to release subconsciously.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, most people, and here's where the consciousness and spirituality come in, most people don't have an inner observer. And emotional intelligence helps people to develop this internal observer who can see, like, Actually, you weren't right in this situation. You should have done it this way. But how many people can actually say that, right? And so developing that inner observer is really critical to self-awareness.
Yeah.
And when we don't have it, the external world is our mirror, and it's showing us where we are kind of like need to grow and develop. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, and it's and the problem with that too that I can see is that sometimes it's too late. Like you've done the damage before you realize through that external mirror. There's almost a slight delay there on the things that you do. If you're self-aware, you might stop yourself
Mhm.
from saying something, doing something. I mean, would you call that again? It goes back to saying it's the and this is kind of a core psychology discussion point is that the id, the ID, however you want to pronounce it, it's really difficult to look at itself. Do you see that as like the biggest emotional intelligence blind spot on leaders, not being able to look inwardly, or is there something else that we've not yet talked about that's a bigger blind spot?
I think it's the commitment that people have. It is scary for a lot of people to see something, to see themselves from a side because they were never taught to do that. And I think that that work needs to be taught early on in schools, to be honest with you. I do think that the conscious leadership or some kind of a leadership program that I know John Maxwell has been implementing, and I would love to be, creating a curriculum in the future. That's one of the avenues I see the conscious leadership go to really help children learn early on how to understand themselves better so that they make the right choices aligned to their soul calling, aligned with themselves, not with what the society is pushing on them. That's really important because then we'll have a lot more holistically happy whole people who know their path, who walk their path um, consciously, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Well, I'd like to dig in a little bit around, and I'm not a big fan of the phrase, but the toxic leadership. So, I mean,
Mm.
that can mean a lot of different things to different people around there. But I mean, one of it, go to some of my examples. I've got two prior managers in mind here. What are the warning signs, would you say, that a leader is operating from a more reactive or unconscious state?
Yeah, great question. Um, you can feel it. It's first of all, it's energy, and energy comes into the room way before you do and leaves the room way after you left. And this is where the spirituality comes in and the energetic intelligence. Why is it that sometimes there's someone walks into a meeting and all of a sudden the room lights up and everyone's happy to see that person, and the energy just shifted, and uplifted everyone. They didn't do anything. They probably just said hi. And why is it then when another person walks into the room and everyone's like, like I don't want to be here,
Yeah.
right? It's our energy. But energy is driven by the emotion and the thought that we're thinking. So when we have an insecure leader, an insecure person, let's just start at the beginning. If we take a person who is struggling in their life, who is thinking that life is hard, that they always have to rush after things and then never make it on time, they're sort of like living in this survival mode and victim mentality with the fixed mindset, right?
Yeah.
Life is definitely hard for them because that's the reality they are living based on the mentality, the thoughts that they are thinking.
Yeah.
And um, and if we take this person from a personal level where life is not as good and it's kind of hard, and put them into a leadership position, now I see that everywhere that people get promoted based on a specific skill on something they've done really great, or by the
You're
order.
great technically as an individual contributor, and the idea is that you take the best of your ICs and make them a leader. Like
Right.
they're two different paths, and yeah.
Right. And so what happens is that we project to the outside world what we have inside. And
Mhm.
if inside we're insecure, we are hit with imposter syndrome, and everyone can read our energy, and we know that they're not going to listen to us. But
Yeah, but
that's my team. How am I going to make my team listen to me if they don't follow me naturally? Here's the thing: when you have an uplifted energy, people just follow you naturally
Right.
because you have the influence comes from within, influence comes from confidence. But when we're insecure and we want to hide but we need to be a leader, what happens is that we start using manipulation techniques, we start creating restrictive policies and rules to keep people in line, because let's face it, it's like herding cats sometimes.
Yeah. But
Right.
you bring up, I mean, it's a popular topic out there. There's a lot of opinions around, dealing with managing imposter syndrome. I mean, everybody feels that to some degree. Like, you're being stretched, you're being challenged, that you have opportunities for growth if you have those. That's my opinion. That, like,
Mhm.
that's a natural response when there's something that's new,
Yes.
that's different, that's out of that comfort zone, that's going to push you in the next role. It doesn't mean that you're not capable of doing that. Not
Right.
always. I mean, there's people that rightfully so feel imposter syndrome, because there's the other side of people being promoted outside of their skill, because of
Mhm.
politics or favoritism or a bunch of other reasons. Like, but again, I look at imposter syndrome as a natural response of, this is uncomfortable, and then you have to go and look at, why am I uncomfortable about this thing? Is it because I don't feel prepared? Is it because I
Mhm.
don't know my stuff? Is it because, or is it because, like, you just feel out of place because you're new in the role and the company, kind of things around that. A lot of things that can kind of bring on those similar feelings. I think that those are two different things. There's nervousness, and then there's imposter syndrome. But how does imposter syndrome affect the way that leaders show up for their teams?
That's a great question. It really depends on the leader, but for the most part, I see difference between a leader with a fixed mindset with imposter syndrome and the leader with the growth mindset with imposter syndrome. Because let's face it, this is the mechanism that we all have. It's a protective mechanism. Every time you are up leveling to the next thing in your life, the next level in business and career in life, we get hit with imposter syndrome because that's the natural mechanism. We are preparing ourselves for this next level. That means that we probably need to learn new skills. We probably need to, invest into, or like get some new resources, spend some time growing ourselves in this direction, growing our team, etc. But what happens with imposter syndrome when we're in a fixed mindset is that I am scared and I can't fix it. And if I can't fix it, but I have to make other people do what I want to do, on earth am I going to do this? So this is where insecurities, in my opinion, is taking sort of like this kind of like a bigger scale, and it becomes difficult for leaders to then navigate their fear. So then we see lack of transparency, different things are being said to different people on the team. So there is no kind of like cohesive, open communication. This
Mhm.
is when we see in the meeting, all of a sudden, a new director showing up out of the blue without like a welcome email or without like even, and I've experienced that at the places I worked before, which was really kind of like stunning to me. And when on the outside, it seems like they are kind and friendly, but the things that they do project exactly that miserable insecurity that fosters the toxic environment, unfortunately. And that was the exact example I lived through. And what happened in that organization, the department, out of 20 people, within 3 months, 12 people left. And then they had to hire new people.
Yeah.
And I was one of them too.
Yeah, I mean, I've been through
So,
that a few times, where you have, again, somebody come in, and again, they might be technically good at their role, but you see just a complete shift in the organization, and some of your best that leave during that, because they'll find your best people will find the jobs the quickest to leave that. And you know that, okay, there's
yeah,
something that's off here with this new manager, with this new leader. There's something what changed, what, like, what happened here,
yeah,
and And then it's I think it's also kind of indicative of upper leadership, like what are they going to go and do about it when they become aware. Again, it's an indication of their leadership ability to realize, you know, what's the best for the business. Like, I hired this person that's technically capable of this role, great operation leader, but terrible people person, and is
Mhm.
turned the entire organization toxic. I mean, that tells me I might not be in that team, but I might then look at how is the CEO, the leader, going to react to this to defend the business when everybody realizes this horrible manager there that just does a great job of managing up to the
Yeah.
CEO, but is ruining the business. Um, like, anyway, that's a scenario around that. I mean, we're really talking more about on the personal level to talk about. We could get into talk war stories about past companies things, but I'm interested when you're coaching with leaders, like what daily practices can help leaders to uh,
Mhm.
stay mindful and present, conscious in their leadership. Like what tips do you coach them on and provide for them?
What a great question. Thank you for asking it. So, some people say that it's really great to have a morning routine. Other people say, well, I don't need it. If you're self-aware enough to not need it, great. But if you're developing your self-awareness and you are not sure how to create that mental clarity that you wake up with every day, where you don't feel rushed, where you don't feel burnt out, where you know exactly what you're going to do, knowing that fires will come up along the way, and you have the flexibility to pivot within your task or within your agenda with the flexible mindset. That's actually when life becomes easier, and that's when communication and processes become better.
Yeah.
So what I would suggest is wake up half an hour to maybe an hour earlier and spend that time of the day with yourself solely. Use that time to, maybe you can download a meditation app, maybe you can listen to some like a short Joe Dispenza meditation. I highly recommend. He's brilliant and genius in what he does. Maybe you can listen to some affirmations for 10 minutes while you're just sitting quietly with your eyes closed, allowing yourself not to think about anything. Because let's face what most of us do, leaders, not leaders, I mean, people not in leadership positions. The first thing we do is that we wake up and we'll look at our cell phone. And basically, we just spoiled everything for the day because our attention has not gained the clarity of what the day is going to be about, what we're going to project for the day, how we're going to feel into the day, right? And we just bombarded our brain with the dopamine from just scrolling all of that, and it just went nowhere.
Isn't it amazing that how much happier we would all be if we didn't have customers or employees?
Well,
I
I
think I
don't
just solved it right there. Solve all the problems right there.
well, it's all about organizing yourself. Like,
Yeah.
we can't really control the time, and the time is an interesting notion, but we truly can organize ourselves in the way that we have time for everything. And that time in the morning, when you have whether like 20 minutes, half an hour, which I do every morning like a clock, because that's my time to create my day. I use it to envision my reality going forward. I visualize what I want for my company, for my family, for myself, and then from there I do Wing Chun gymnastics as a warm up. I used to do Wing Chun back in the USSR where I was born and grew up, and it truly sets my day. My mind is clear, and I know what I want. It doesn't. I don't have anxiety of all the things I need to do because I didn't let it get to my mind. Like, I elevated my consciousness to a higher level,
Yeah.
right? So that's what meditation helps to do. And then when you go about your day, you basically understand, okay, these are the three main points that I would love to get to. Now, can I add into my calendar a couple of blocks of time, maybe 20 minutes, like a buffer time, knowing that something will come up? Can I be strategic about planning my day, planning my week, so I don't burn myself out?
There are tools now. I mean, and Microsoft went through this, where there's mindfulness apps. I mean, if you buy a brand new
Yeah,
iPhone, it's kind of out of the box. It's already in there that you can set those things up. There's things that you can do, and I know that a lot of people really follow this, practice this, where it'll automatically buffer 15 minutes or 30 minutes between meetings. It won't let people schedule. If I've got a 30-minute meeting, it'll put a 15-minute buffer after that,
great.
so that it enforces that time to give you the ability to unplug from that and move over to the next topic. I share in my consulting and my coaching about developing healthy habits. Everybody says, "Oh, I've got a morning routine." I said, "Yeah, but is it a good routine? Is it a healthy routine? You're saying that you're." This is like a lot of consultants. I know you'll understand this too, Tatyana. Is that they said you're paying me to give you advice, and then you're not listening to any of the advice. Part of it is developing healthy habits. Like you come to me because you want help to achieve this goal. I'm telling you how things that you need to change, and you're telling me no, the way that I'm doing it now is fine. It's not. That's why we're having the conversation.
Yeah.
But this is, developing the healthy habits, it starts with that. And I love, like, for anybody that's seen a TED talk or been to business school. I mean, a lot of places everybody knows it, but this whole idea of that, you've seen, there's videos online of the teacher with this giant glass vase and puts a bunch of big rocks into it and
I
says, "Is
remember
it
that, yeah.
full?" And the class like, "Yes, it's full." Then he fills it up to the top with gravel around the big rocks, and he's like, "Is it full now?" He's like, "Yes, it's full." Then he pours this big container of sand, which fills every nook and cranny. "Is it full now?" They're like, "Yes, it is." Then he takes a big pitcher of water and pours the whole thing in with all of that.
Yeah.
He's throwing away the vase after that, by the way, folks, because it's created cement.
I hope so.
But I mean, the whole idea there is that if you structure your routine, the healthy habits around the big items that are the important things that you need to do, you're always going to find room for then the tasks that don't have a due date, they aren't urgent, and those are the gravel, and then all of the other things that fill in is the sand, and then all of the other noise and the entertainment aspect of that is the water on top of that.
Mhm.
Even though if you really want to take the analogy too far, I mean, water is life, though.
That's
Different
great.
analogy. Okay. Anyway, and that would be and it's the thing you die from the fastest by not having it. But in the case of the rocks in that container, but that's you. People don't take the time to go and reevaluate, like, how am I spending my time when I get into the office? Maybe you're getting up at 5:30 a.m. because you've got to commute in. um,
Mhm.
I mean, there's things you could do, the music that you listen to versus get right into listening to voicemails, listening to talk radio and filling your head with just more noise, rather than
Mhm.
using a commute as a time to have kind of a semi-zen moment as much as you can and stop into traffic. But once you get into the office, look at that process. What are the steps before the first meeting begins? Do you have the time to go through and then focus on the big rock items, lay it all out for the day, and
Absolutely.
organize that? And I mean, that is so critical. There's so much that you can achieve and find time for if you take the time just to get organized, lay out like all the different things. Suddenly you're finding time that you didn't think you had.
And that's exactly true. And what we're talking about here is the focus. Focus is key, and the energetic intelligence is this is where it starts, right? So by creating the space for focus in the morning and kind of like arranging your day in your mind in the way how you feel, you're not letting the anxiety govern you, right? And then when you go about your day feels a lot more grounded. It feels like you actually do a lot more that you planned because you have that space, as you were saying, for smaller things, right? Around the bigger things as well. So focus is truly, truly important. And developing focus can be done by doing meditation, by walking in nature, and by not scrolling the social media in the morning. Because let's face it, it actually takes away our focus
Yeah.
from what's important. And then how many times, ask yourself this, how many times did you go into Instagram to check for somebody's name, for example, and then half an hour later, I was like, wait, why am I here?
Yeah.
Who
Well,
has done that before?
it's the I think one of the problems that we don't talk enough about is, I mean, this is, again, goes a slightly different direction, but yeah, is we've become dopamine addicted.
Yeah,
It's like anything else, like the body looks for, is addicted to those activities because of the brain, the chemicals that are created in the body that then crave more of that. It's like when you eat sugar, your body then craves what? More sugar.
exactly.
And dopamine works the same way. And so it's I if I weren't in marketing, I would love to turn off and never return to most of the social media platforms. But it's, unfortunately, it's part of what I do. I have to interact every day. It's just part of the job. But I'm doing more and more where I'm not in the applications. I just automate and push things to the platforms. But anyway, I mean, that's a slightly different conversation. Oh, one other question though, on, so if you have a leader that's gone through and they're working on themselves, they've become more conscious, more aware of their weaknesses, and they're building that out. They're really becoming a conscious leader that's trying to incorporate that into their leadership. So to say persona, wrong word. This sounds like you're faking it. No, into the way that they work. They're making changes. How does that impact in the work that you've done, the interactions with leaders? How does that then impact the team? Is it a slow start? Do they see immediate results from that?
That's a great question. So what happens is that again, we project what we have on the inside. If a leader invests into their own growth and development, they're going to do the same for their team. And the way it looks like they're going to do team development. When they hire somebody, they're going to be very particular about how they hire, how they welcome and onboard the person. They are going to be really careful and thoughtful about the training that this individual needs to get in order to be the most effective at their job. Oftentimes, I see this gap where it's like, oh, you're hired, boom, let's go. Just go do this. No, that doesn't work this way. This leader will empower their team members by giving them resources, the training, the freedom of having one, the accountability, two, the space for creativity, and three, the structure that they need to be successful in their projects. And yeah, and it's possible because when the key here is to feel valued. When people feel valued in their jobs, they're going to stay forever. I have an example of this when I used to work at the Rockefeller Center for Public Policy and Social Sciences at Dartmouth College, where I developed and created leadership development programs and taught leadership for undergraduate students there. It was really incredible. I call her still work mom, Sadna Hall, if you're listening, big hi to you. She invested so much energy and time into developing us. I remember the very first assessment that I did was at the Rockefeller Center with Sadhna when she brought in, I believe it was Peak Academy, but I can't remember exactly. We did trimetrics assessment. And for the first time, when I read that, it was like so eye-opening. It's like, oh my goodness, like totally now that totally makes sense to me. Why I was, bumping heads with this person or why I was getting along with this person. And then raising the salaries, but also raising the standard and the demand for how we were expected to show up and own our like program officer jobs right at that time. So all of that, the accountability, the empowerment, the demand for greatness, that was really awesome. And when I had to move from New Hampshire area to Boston area, and then I started working the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, it was like I wish I could take my job with me because of how how strongly valued and empowered I felt, and how much I grew over the years that I worked there.
Mhm.
All I have to say about that time and that experience is that I'm forever grateful. Now that is an example of a conscious leader for me.
No, I definitely, and I have teachers, leaders that were like that. Took the time, or at least it felt like they took the time. Again,
Yeah.
it could have been the Vulcan mind meld. I might have been tricked somehow, but no, I think that they were genuinely, that way. They loved, they're passionate about talking about the topic and getting in and helping people. And that's again, that's one of those things where going back to that leader that's in finance and that I've known since we were both, teenagers, that it's you genuinely feel like you connected with them, and it was because you were genuinely connecting with them. It's like when I did my went through and did the insights trainings. One of the things of showing the conscious versus unconscious is that they actually put the diagrams up of like the measurements of that, and the patterns around them is really interesting. My patterns of conscious and unconscious were almost identical. And
Interesting.
what that meant was that if you ask me my opinion, I will tell you my opinion. You don't need to read something into it. You don't need to, like, what does Christian really mean? But he said this, like, I mean exactly what I say. And I didn't think much of that until I started looking at my peers and their profiles, because we were sharing the information. And I was the only one of my peers that had a match like that. Like, they were like, so you're faking it in these areas, or that you're, or you, again, or there's a lot of different reasons why the pattern changes around that. But it comes down to, I always thought of it as a high emotional intelligence factor, is that if uh, the words that you say mean, what they say, that there's no other interest, there's no other a purpose in me telling you this for this reason, kind of political reasons for that, or whatever that is.
Right.
There's no manipulation around that. But then again, you can have a strong leader that might be very opposite in their conscious unconscious, but they're able to communicate it. So they have to dig deep to bring those skills out. At the end, uh, it doesn't matter that they're having to dig deep for it. If they're recognizing your style, they're adjusting for it and giving the pieces that you need, to that you're feeling warm and fuzzy about the communications and the relationship, like all those things. Does it matter that they had to dig deep to do that, and using techniques and practices, that it wasn't just unconscious and natural for them if you're communicating well?
Well, I think when things are unconscious, there is a lack. There is a lack of clarity in the way we communicate. And oftentimes, when we are unconscious, it means that we are overlooking something. We may be overusing our strength, and it comes out as a weakness. We may be overlooking our weaknesses and pushing it as a strength, because when we are not seeing how we come off to other people,
Mm-hmm.
then we are actually losing out on the great potential, on realizing our potential, on creating the team, reliable, amazing, wonderful team that will drive your business, that will drive your revenue, that will make the customers happy.
Yeah.
But it all starts with the leader. If the leader is not investing time, energy into themselves, oftentimes they become the cornerstone of why people leave, right?
Yeah. Well, it sounds corny, but I think kind of a wrap up key takeaway is like, leadership, it's a journey. It's not a destination. It's not a point on the path. Like, it really
That's
is. It's an ongoing journey for that. And we're constantly evolving and changing. And so I like that idea. I mean, I always said that if I like won the lottery, and I don't play the lottery, I don't gamble, but statistically, the fact that I don't play the lottery doesn't statistically really change my chances much. So,
That's true.
but anyway, it's I always thought that if I suddenly didn't have to worry about money at all, that I would be the eternal student, and I just love learning and about all these different
Mm,
things, sharing that knowledge. And I think this is a great area where I wish, like to your point, I wish they taught this earlier on in school. I mean, most business schools don't go through and talk about things like this.
yeah.
And so it should be like that kind of leadership development. Maybe there's magnet schools or private schools that do courses like that. But would be great to have that early on and make younger students be aware of like their style and how, as they're growing and their brains are developing, how that impacts so much of certainly their professional stories for the rest of their lives. But yeah, that's any kind of final words of wisdom, any other call to action that you would give people that are interested in pursuing this path and learning more about their own style and becoming more conscious of their strengths and weaknesses?
Well, one of the things I would mention is that remember that you are the leader and creator of your life. Whether you're creating it consciously or unconsciously, you are creating it. So it is in your favor to actually step into the higher role in your own life and start creating your life consciously. And to help you do that, we offer the Conscious Leadership Program for leaders, executives, small business owners, managers who want to elevate themselves and their teams. That's one of the things. If you are a leader in your organization and you are noticing some kind of misalignment in your team that is sort of like not beneficial for the company, I invite you to connect with me and explore the program offerings and workshops that include the Maxwell Disc, that include Communicate to Connect, conscious leadership, that will help you to elevate your team and grow your business as well.
I know in the blog post, of course, I'll have, like you also had added in, like you've got your Secrets to Success and Ultimate Wellbeing kit that are on the
Right.
website as well. So I'll
Yep.
provide some links to those things, or anybody that's listening want to go take advantage of those tools. And then of course I'll have all the contact information for Tatyana as well and her company. So if anybody has questions, want to follow up, please do that directly to Tatyana. If you ask me questions, I'll share my opinion, but I'll direct to the experts that can help you develop the skills. So, well,
Thank
Tatyana,
you, Christian. So wonderful. I really enjoyed our conversation.
really appreciate you being on the show. You've been listening to the CollabTalk podcast. New episodes are published weekly, and you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, and most other podcast platforms. Thanks for listening.